And I said, when I was a little boy, I used to go and climb a house in Jerusalem to see the old city, because I couldn't go to the Wailing Wall. I couldn't go to those places which are holy to the Jews. Now every Arab, every Jew, every Christian can have as freedom of access to all these places. And then he said, Ziyad Abu Ziyad interfered and said, "You're lying. You know I live in Al-Azariya, and I can't get to the Wailing Wall. So I can't get to the Mount Temple, to the Mesgid Al-Aqsa." And I said, "What are you talking about? Last Friday, there were 50,000 Arabs praying on Mount Temple." And he said, "Yes, they infiltrated through the Israeli Defense Forces." I said, 50,000 infiltrated? What do you think, the Israeli forces are blind? He said, "Yes." You know who shook their heads in consent? My colleagues from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv University. And when they shook their heads, they looked at me as if I was talking nonsense. So my problem is not with the discussions with the Arabs, but with some of my friends who think that Israel should be the end of it. And I think that as long as we do not accept the fact that the Oslo Agreement was a mistake, and we should take a different path to stop appeasing the Arabs, but a more offensive path. And when I mean offensive, I mean mainly diplomatic and political offensive way. To initiate acts that are important for the existence of Israel. What I think should be done is much more hasbara than Israel is doing. You know, the budget of Israel is $100 billion a year. Do you know how much Israel gives for the hasbara a year? $10 million, out of which $6 million go on salaries. This is not even 1 promille of the budget of Israel. And the Arabs put all their efforts, all their money, and look what they've achieved. Israel now is a country that nobody wants to have anything to do with it. Because in all UN institutions, in the press, they've given so much money to bring shame on Israel. This anti-Semitism has now flourished. It reminds me of the 1938 years. Just 2 weeks ago, a colleague of mine in Ariel University, who was supposed to participate in a conference in Germany, got a letter saying, "Your university is illegal and you are in an occupied territory and therefore you cannot participate in the conference." When I saw this, he sent it to me and I saw that. I was thinking in what way one should tackle such a thing. And in the end, I wrote him a very strong letter. And I thought that this letter not only will not make him participate, but maybe will be will cause that Israelis would not be able to go to such conferences. But you'll be surprised that after that, he wrote a letter and said, we made a mistake, we apologize, we think that education should not be involved with politics, and therefore we'll be happy to have you back. Now what I wrote to them was that it's outrageous that a German institution in a German university on German soil is trying to preach to the Jews what illegality, occupation means. And I said that Israel was the only country who offered the Palestinians a state. So where did we occupy? From whom did we occupy the land? At the most you can say it's disputed land. But if you go to the internet, to Wikipedia, you will find that in the world there are dozens and dozens of disputed lands. So you're not going to get students and lecturers and professors from those places? Why Israel? And it worked, but not always it works. So Israel must take the precautions, and I think the Jewish people have a great task in fighting this anti-Semitism, the new anti-Semitism. And I see problems ahead with the United Nations approval of Palestine. Because once there is an approval, and I hope that Obama would put the veto vote. By the way, the veto vote is not given for free. The veto vote is in contrast with the ability of Netanyahu to say that if a Palestinian state is established, then we are going to annul the Oslo Agreement. But on the whole, if there is a veto, still there is a recognition in the General Assembly, which will cause a lot of trouble because, first of all, you have demonstrations in the West Bank, and there are many Jews living in the West Bank. There are 300,000 Jews in the West Bank, and there is a great demand for more and more houses. You can see that the more they try to suppress living in the West Bank, the more the Jewish people respond in making more houses. But there will be demonstrations, and they will start attacking in the United Nations institutions, as well as in the court in The Hague. But if we stand firm, we'll make it. And ladies and gentlemen, what you're doing for Israel is very, very much appreciated. And I want to thank you.